So Judge Netburn has just come down with a big decision paper, some of the biggest decisions to date in the case of the SEC versus Ripple. She ruled on some of the documents that the SEC was supposed to turn over back in the fall and didn't because they said they were privileged and sealed. Well, in today's video, I'm going to tell you which documents she said are sealed and can stay sealed, and which documents the SEC actually has to turn over to Ripple. And I'm going to talk about some of the time frames as to when this case could actually wrap up, but you might not want to hear it. And right now, Bitcoin has been having a good day. Good compared to the US markets. The Dow Jones and the S&P 500 are not doing so hot. I'm going to talk about why. And I have some reminder notes about the Sologenic airdrop that is coming up at the end of the month, as well as a few other notes regarding Sologenic. Hey everyone, my name is Randy, and welcome back to the Late Night Grind. Right now on this channel, I'm covering the Ripple versus the SEC case, as well as other cryptocurrency news, investment markets, and personal finance. So if any or all those topics interest you, hit the subscribe button. Also hit that bell notification icon so YouTube sends you a notification when I release a new video. If you're feeling generous, I'd really appreciate it if you do two things. Smash that thumbs up button and watch this video all the way to the end. Those really are the two best things that you can do to support a YouTube channel. So if you do that, I greatly appreciate it. All right, guys, let's jump into it. So first, let's talk about what Bitcoin is actually doing today, because it started yesterday after it had a nice run up to over 43,000 and then dropped to about 41,000. Well, today, it was thought that it might drop again. Well, it didn't. In fact, it started to run. It's up almost $1,000 since earlier this morning. And a lot of people are questioning why, because the two US markets, the Dow Jones and the S&P 500, are both having down days. Now, some of the speculation as to the S&P and the Dow, some of which revolve around the CPI numbers that came out yesterday, the Consumer Price Index, the inflation number that came in yesterday, which was extremely high, 7% year over year. However, only about 0.5% from the month prior. So why are those markets actually down? Well, some are thinking that the news of the inflationary data, it just hit the secondary market, the retail investors, in which they've decided to maybe off-risk some of their money out of the stock market, but Bitcoin is running. Well, Bitcoin's a global market, doesn't just depend on what the United States markets are doing. And not only that, there's also some speculation about yet another country that's probably going to make Bitcoin legal tender. There's actually speculation that there could be as much as 3 new countries making Bitcoin legal tender by the end of 2022. That news coming out yesterday may have buoyed Bitcoin's price a little bit today. Now most of the altcoins are up a little bit as well, including XRP, including Sologenic, which I'm going to talk about towards the end of this video. But right now, Bitcoin is it's bumping up against about 43,000, which is a point of resistance. If it breaks through that, probably looking at about 44,500, 44,500 as being another resistance level. After that, it could actually climb for a while. All right, so now let's talk about this decision from Judge Netburn. It was actually multiple decisions from Judge Netburn. This was regarding the deliberative process privilege that the SEC is claiming on all of their documents as to why they should actually turn them over to the judge, to Judge Netburn and to Ripple. So the SEC said that all of these documents are basically the SEC's internal discussions. They're actually not to be brought into places like court because of a whole bunch of reasons, but it's part of their process and how they come up with regulations. Well, Ripple, of course, didn't agree with much of any of that. And so they said, no, a lot of this stuff needs to come out because what you're actually talking about, these discussions, have a lot to do with our case and how much clarity or lack thereof there was and still is in the digital asset space, specifically regarding XRP, Ethereum, and Bitcoin. All right, so what did Judge Netburn actually do? Well, if you just read the last page of her decision, it said that Ripple's motion was granted in part, meaning some of the documents she is going to force the SEC to turn over. The other documents, she agreed with the SEC and that they are deliberative process documents and that they should stay sealed and don't necessarily have bearing on this case. So I've been reading a lot of the analysis on what that decision actually means, and there's a lot of Monday morning lawyers on Twitter. However, some of the ones that I've been reading previously and that I respect have said it looks like it's kind of a toss-up, a little bit of a tie. Both sides got a little bit of what they wanted. The biggest thing in this that Judge Netburn has now said officially that the SEC actually has to turn over is Bill Hinman's speech and the email chain concerning that speech. So everybody that got the email or a copy of that the speech and was asked questions, input, things about drafts, is it the right language? All of that is going to have to be submitted to Ripple and the judge. And she also stated that she agrees that William Hinman's speech was his own opinion and that it wasn't guidance by the SEC. And this is actually a good thing, because by doing this, it strengthens Ripple's case as to a fair notice defense, but it also allowed her to demand the other documents from the SEC. If she would have said, this speech is guidance, then some of the documents that she's actually requesting, such as the email and the handwritten notes from specific meetings, would have been considered deliberative process and would have been sealed, and the SEC would have kept them. So by calling Hinman's speech his opinion, or agreeing that his speech was an opinion, she could actually force the SEC to turn over those documents, and that's exactly what she did. So what's actually going to come from these documents? Well, that remains to be seen, but it's going to be very interesting to see that there may or may not be bombshells within these notes. Okay, so what is actually going to be turned over? We know that the speech, the email chain, and the handwritten notes from some of the meetings that the SEC was having with different people. Specifically, the notes regarding the SEC's meetings with the Digital Advocacy Group and Consensus, among a couple others. Now, those are going to be really interesting to see if they really show, any bombshells or anything that's going to be key to Ripple's fair notice defense. And finally, on page 22 of page 23, if you've printed it out and read it like all good XRP holders should have been, Judge Sarah Netburn lays out the relevance factor. And the relevance meaning that this is what Ripple was saying, why all of these documents are relevant to their case, because Ripple believes that a lot of these point to the ambiguity and the regulatory unclarity, uncertainty in the market during that time frame. And if you read this paragraph, Judge Netburn actually largely seems to agree with Ripple. In fact, she says as much, that the relevance of these documents and what they actually say could prove ambiguity and regulatory status of XRP during that time frame, and that's why they're relevant to the case. So she uses that to back up why she's actually going after the SEC for the rest of these documents. So would Ripple like to have gotten more of the documents? Yes, of course, absolutely. But getting the ones that she specifically said to, these are still going to be key and could provide some key evidence as to the regulatory uncertainty, as well as some very possible hints of corruption, or at the very least, some major conflicts of interest. The other part I thought was very interesting was that throughout these documents, both Judge Netburn and from what the SEC was arguing, seems to be distancing themselves from saying that Ethereum is not a security, that they never said that there's no official guidance, and that Bill Hinman's speech was one of the only things that they actually specifically discussed regarding Ethereum. Now, if you combine that with what Gary Gensler just said, on a new video that was just released of Gary Gensler speaking about some venture capitalists that came to the SEC in 2018 and tried to convince the SEC that what they were working on was possibly the sales of securities, but they're not really securities and they're going to move into a decentralized state. And he was saying this all while he was kind of rolling his eyes. In my opinion, we know exactly who he's talking about. He's talking about the Ethereum free pass meetings. So is Gary Gensler actually going to flip and go after Ethereum after this case is resolved? That would absolutely ignite fireworks throughout the rest of the crypto space if that were true. But as we know, there is a ton of evidence that the SEC and a lot of the guys from Ethereum were not playing very well with the rest of the crypto space. Okay, so when is all this going to get resolved? Well, according to Jeremy Hogan, who put out his last video, he thinks that the time frame for this case getting resolved is probably not what you're going to want to hear. Originally, he said maybe January, but that was back in June of 2021. And then he said, well, maybe May. And then in December, he said, well, maybe May, if it's that's a very optimistic time frame. But now his updated stance, looking at the extensions that were given to the end of February for expert discovery, as well as some of these other dates and some of these other things going on, he seems to be thinking that this case would be ending somewhere around August or September of 2022. Now, depending on what you think about market cycles, that could be perfect timing. Bitcoin could be moonshotting right about that time, or maybe it'll be down around 20,000 and everybody will be exiting the space. Who really knows? But that is what Jeremy Hogan's opinion was, and he seems to be fairly accurate regarding some of these things. And speaking of time frames, I have some notes on Sologenic, because at the end of this month, actually 1 week from now, January 20th, the actual airdrop of Sologenic tokens will be coming to XRP holders and to Solo token holders. You should be specifically happy if you are a Solo token holder, because you're going to be getting much more than just the XRP holders will be. So January 20th, keep that in mind and look at your wallets wherever you are holding your XRP or Solo tokens for that drop. Keep in mind, at some point in January, Sologenic's going to be announcing officially the launch of their NFT platform on the XRP ledger. Now, I've seen a few hints of some other NFT marketplaces launching on the XRP ledger coming up soon, but Sologenic could be the first to market and the first one to check out. My guess is there's going to be some news right around airdrop time about this new NFT marketplace. We'll see if that shakes out. There's also news of a whole bunch of other exchanges that are now going to be listing Solo, with which you can buy and sell once you get your airdropped Solo tokens. Let me know in the comment section below what you think about this decision by Judge Netburn, if you think this is actually going to help Ripple, if this was a tie, it's really a toss-up, or if the documents that the judge is actually asking the SEC to turn over are going to turn up any bombshells. Because as we all know, Bill Hinman's opinion speech was definitely not his opinion. It was given to him. Will these notes show that there was a whole group of people behind writing that? And if so, what's that going to do to the judge's opinion of the regulatory ambiguity and uncertainty? Let me know in the comment section down below. Also, don't forget to follow me on Twitter. There's a link in the description below for that. Thanks so much for giving this video a big thumbs up and for watching all the way to the end. And as always, I'll see you guys on the next video.